You ever get a letter so ridiculous, so out of left field, you nearly spit your coffee all over the porch? Because that's how my Tuesday morning started. And if you'd told me 3 years ago I'd end up in a showdown with a suburban HOA, I'd have laughed in your face. But let me rewind a bit so you understand how a regular guy like me landed in this circus. 3 years back, I inherited my great-aunt's old farmhouse, one of those creaky beauties built in 1845 back when planned communities meant, don't put your outhouse upstream from your well. 5 acres of wild gardens, a barn that still creaks when the wind's right, a house that smells like sunshine and floor wax, all tucked right in the middle of what's now basically HOA Disneyland. I'm not exaggerating. Some developer bought up every farm around me, scraped the land flat, and threw up 100 beige boxes with matching mailboxes and a set of rules longer than the Bible. They wrapped this Stepford paradise around 3 sides of my land. Me, I checked every deed and document my house, and I were islands of red paint and split rail fencing in a sea of manicured monotony. And I liked it that way. Apparently, though, that was a problem for President Linda. Now, Linda is the kind of person who keeps her grass trimmed to regulation height and probably measures her mailbox with a tape measure every morning. She made it her personal mission to tell me more than once that my wild gardens and my non-standard house color were bringing down property values. Which, by the way, I heard as your home has personality, and that terrifies me. 6 months in, Linda shows up, clipboard pinched face, tells me my fence violates community standards. I tell her politely that I'm not part of her HOA. She says we'll see about that. At the time, I thought that was the end of it. Turns out that was just the beginning of her campaign. The passive-aggressive comments died off after a while. For about 6 months, things got suspiciously quiet. I figured she'd moved on to harassing someone about mailbox paint or gnome placement. Then that fateful Tuesday morning, I'm sipping coffee on my porch, sun barely up, when the mail carrier hands me this thick, official-looking letter from a law firm I've never heard of. You know how people say my heart sank? Mine did a full-on base jump. The letter was a notice of lien. $12,400 in unpaid HOA dues fines for architectural violations. Apparently, red paint is a crime now, and a heap of legal fees. According to Linda's cronies, I'd been delinquent for 3 years. The kicker: if I didn't pay up in 30 days, they'd start foreclosure. At first, I laughed. It was just too absurd. But as I read, my hands started to shake. The county records showed an actual lien on my house, not some empty threat, a real legal mess, all because some HOA decided the only thing better than their own property was mine. So I called the law firm. The paralegal who picked up spoke to me like I was a deadbeat. I tried to explain I wasn't even in their HOA. She cut me off. "You'll need to take it up with the HOA board, sir." Click. Next, I called the HOA management company. After being bounced around, I finally got a guy who said my property was automatically included in the HOA because my driveway connected to their road. Never mind that the road was county property and my farmhouse had been there since Ulysses S. Grant was in diapers. Facts apparently are optional. That night, my wife, thank God for her, asked the practical questions. Did I have my deed, my property survey? We went through every yellowed page, every official document, and you know what? I was right. My land was never ever part of that HOA. But the lien was still real, and it was now tangled in county records. I decided to go straight to the source the next HOA board meeting. I showed up, nerves rattling, with a folder of documents under my arm. The meeting was held in this soul-sucking beige room with flickering fluorescent lights, and Linda, sitting up front, looked at me like she'd caught a raccoon in her pool. I barely finished introducing myself before she cut me off. "The lien is legitimate. You owe back dues plus penalties." When I asked to see documentation showing my property was part of the HOA, she got all condescending. "The paperwork's in our archives, but you don't need to see it." I asked how a house built in 1845 could possibly be in an HOA formed in 2002. She shrugged. "That's irrelevant. It's current ownership that matters." She ended with a threat: pay up, or we'll foreclose and sell your home at auction. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't about rules. This was about control, and maybe hoping I'd just be too tired, too intimidated to fight. You ever get so mad that you just snap awake? That's what happened to me. I left the meeting angry, but more than that, I was determined. The next morning, I took the day off work and camped out at the county recorder's office. I pulled every document related to my property. Turns out the original land grant from 1845 was still there. My property had never not once been subject to any HOA. But then I found something that almost made me throw up. 2 years earlier, someone had filed a notarized document annexing my land into the HOA, supposedly signed by me, only I'd never seen this thing in my life. Someone had forged my signature and the notary Linda's buddy, the HOA secretary. That's not a paperwork mix-up, that's fraud, real criminal fraud. At this point, most people would have run straight to a lawyer. But you know what? I wanted Linda and her board to dig themselves in even deeper. So I invited them all over for a settlement discussion. Linda brought the whole crew plus a management company guy, thinking they'd pressure me into paying up. Before they arrived, I made sure my phone was recording perfectly legal in my state. Linda strutted around pointing out violations, my fence, my gardens, my barn, red house. When I asked about the annexation document, she started getting flustered, insisting everyone in the area had to be part of the HOA. When I asked for proof that they maintained the county road, she just waved it off. Then she said the quiet part out loud. They'd simply decided it was fair for everyone to pay for amenities, so they just included my property. That was the story right there on tape. I sent all of this documents recordings to a real estate attorney. He was equal parts shocked and thrilled. We hit back hard: civil suit for slander of title, a petition to quiet title, complaints to the sheriff for document fraud, and to the county clerk about the fake notary. Things moved fast. The HOA's insurance company was horrified. They wanted nothing to do with fraudulent liens. The county clerk investigated and discovered the notary wasn't even properly licensed. Word started spreading in the neighborhood that Linda was spending HOA funds on her private vendetta. Residents got angry. Nobody wants their dues wasted on someone else's mess. Then the county attorney stepped in. The lien wasn't just released, it was stricken void ab initio, which is fancy lawyer talk for never happened. And Linda, she and her secretary were both charged with felony document fraud. The HOA tried to claim Linda had acted alone, but the recording I'd made showed otherwise. The insurance company dropped their coverage. The board had to dip into the emergency fund for legal fees, and the residents finally had enough. They voted out Linda and every board member who'd backed her scheme. The new board offered a full settlement, paid my legal fees, damages, and most importantly issued a formal letter to everyone in the community, making it crystal clear my property was never and would never be part of their HOA. Linda, she lawyered up, pled guilty to lesser charges, and got stuck with probation, community service, and the permanent loss of her standing in the neighborhood. Not long after, I saw a for sale sign go up in her yard. The very thing she'd tried to steal from me ended up costing her own home. You want to know what satisfaction tastes like? For me, it's the sound of a wrought iron gate swinging shut. After all that, I hired a blacksmith to make a gate for my driveway, big, heavy, hand-forged, with a sign that reads, "Established 1845, not a member of any HOA." It stands right at the entrance where everyone can see it. The new board even sent me a note saying how much they liked it. Most of the neighbors, they came by, shook my hand, asked about the history of the place. It turned out they just wanted to live in peace too. Linda had fooled them, but when the truth came out, they did the right thing. The moral here, if you're looking for one, is simple. Sometimes the loudest people in the room aren't the ones in the right, they're just used to not being challenged. I kept the house, the wild gardens, the split-rail fence, and best of all, my independence. That farmhouse has stood through wars, depressions, tornadoes, and now the world's most power-hungry HOA president. And it'll outlast whatever comes next. You know, sometimes I'll spot Linda driving by, doing her best not to look at the sign on my gate. But I see her. And I hope every time she catches a glimpse, she remembers you don't get to bully someone off land their families had for generations, not if they're stubborn enough to fight back. So let me ask you, if someone tried to steal what's rightfully yours, would you give in? Or would you stand your ground even if the fight got ugly? Ever tangled with someone in authority who thought the rules didn't apply to them? I'd love to hear about it. Maybe you've got a story to top mine. Go ahead. Tell me your take on justice and karma, or drop your own war stories below. I'll be out back, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise over my wild old garden.